Hi, I'm Chris Brooks, and I'm proud owner of inout House and Garden Remodelling. And I just thought you might be interested in hearing about my business. I made this presentation to a few business colleagues of mine recently, and I thought I'd put it out to a sort of wider audience. My business is as the name suggests, focused on house and garden design, manage and build. And I want to move straight on. This is the part two. I've spoken about the garden, so I'm now going to speak a little bit about the house side of the business. And it follows a very similar process to the garden. I'll briefly describe that. I'll send you a questionnaire. If you can fill that in, that gives a bit about a bit about what you want out of the house remodelling, and it gives me the opportunity to start thinking about it before we actually meet. But when we do meet, I use that questionnaire as a basis of our agenda, and then do a survey and of the house. Of the necessary elements of the house. And now at this point it gets slightly different than they was dealing with the garden, because obviously you've got planning permissions and building control approvals to contend with. So I often meet with the planners before I finalise a sort of my brief back to you. Just to make sure that the planners are reasonably happy with what we're proposing, because there's no point in raising your expectations only for them to be dashed when we finally get to meet the planners. So that's quite an important aspect. But the big difference between my approach and say that of an architect would be that what I can do with my 30 years experience in the construction and garden business is give you very early cost and program advice, so that when you start to make decisions about what you want and whether you can afford it, you know what the price of the various elements will be and how it's made up, and there's a better discussion around that. So that's what I do. I tend not to actually do the build. I can do, and I'd be happy to give you a quote for it. But then you wouldn't know whether or not my quote was competitive. And that's not to say that I'm not competitive, but I always like to think that I can get best value for money. And probably the best way of me doing that is by opening up the marketplace and getting three contractors to price it, and me remaining with you through the rest of the project to quality and cost control on the rest of the project, and make sure that the contractors are doing what they said they'd do, and control it, and therefore the completed project hopefully exceeds your expectations. I also tend to do a sort of maintenance regime, even on a house side of the business, because that's important. And certainly, all the controls and everything. Make sure you understand how things operate. So anyway, that's enough about the process, I think, because I'm now going to just show you a few examples of current projects that we're undertaking. And the first one is a project down in Woodford Green, north of London, and there we had to provide drawings, two-dimensional drawings, for the planning authority. They didn't want to see three-dimensional drawings for whatever reason. Some authorities accept them, some authorities don't. So that's the sort of drawing we produced for the planning authority down there. But what we provided for the client was three-dimensional drawings showing their proposed off-road parking and a front porch that they wanted. And so that's that. and the other things we did for our ground floor rear extension was three views, showing the space, but also showing furniture, so how you could use the space. Very important for a client, because they may not be able to appreciate what a 3 metre by 4 metre room looks like, but as soon as you put some furniture in, they start to get a feel for not only the size of the room but how it can be used. I'm not suggesting that it's the final layout, but it starts to allow them to start thinking about how they want to use that space, and it's very important that we do talk about how they're going to use it, because that leads to positions of electrical sockets and lights, so that the telly can be plugged in locally rather than have long leads to somewhere, because we haven't thought it through. So anyway, that was that project down in Woodford Green. It's an interesting project we're doing in Warwickshire. We don't just look at projects in Essex and Hertfordshire. We can go quite a distance. It's quite an interesting project because it had some structural issues with the existing building, so the budget was fairly stretched, so we had to be very careful with what we proposed, and how long it was going to take. Anyway, I'll come on to that, because we've given lots of advice in that respect. But the whole essence of this project was to, the client was in occupation, but we wanted to remodel the house so that it moved the lounge from the front of the house, which was very close to a main road, to the back of the house, which would be a lot quieter, and opened up to the quite a lovely rear garden. And unfortunately, the existing house suffered with a very poor entrance area, and a house of the scale of this needs a grand entrance, I believe, and so the changes incorporated that as well. So we accompanied those drawings with, again, three-dimensional drawings of how the house sat within the garden, and as you can see, you start to get appreciation of how the house will look. And even when we produced plans, we give the plans some shading, so they actually look more like a model rather than a simple two-dimensional plan. So that first drawing focuses on the hard landscaping, and the second drawing focuses more on how we want to start planting the areas up. And lots of images we produced for the client, because she couldn't really understand those drawings, but she did understand these views, as you could do. I was very pleased with the views, and I think you can tell that you get a very good understanding of the space, and what it'll eventually look like. So that's what we did. But not only that, we also produced programs for the client. That's what's called a master program. So that covered the design, the approval, the tendering period, and the construction period. So it's a sort of a summary of the entire project. And then we brought that down into a design period program, into, I think that was the garden program, and then finally that's the house program. I know that because obviously there's a lot more activities on that program than any of the others, and if you're not familiar with the sort of bar charts, what you get is a list of activities down the left hand column, of sort of how you build the house, and then with a time scale across the top. So each activity had a start and a finish, and you were able to understand how one related to the other. So that's what provided. And we also provided some budget cost plans, and that was the summary. That was one for the house. I think the next one's the one for the garden, and then there was one for the fees, the design fees, the approval fees, and any third-party fees. and all of those obviously were totaled to give you the summary that we started with. So that's what we gave, and as I say, that provided very early information to allow the client to start making the decisions necessary on timescales, on what she could afford and what she couldn't afford, and it allowed a much more easy view of the drawings in terms of full understanding of if you made any changes, the implications on the cost and the program. So that's what we did there. We don't just do large projects, and this was a bathroom makeover we recently completed, and even on this small bathroom, we still did three three-dimensional images of the bathroom, so that the client fully understood, the relationship with the bath and the wash hand basin and the toilet, and how the window related to those, and how the shower related to those, and how furniture related to those, to the extent that she could then start deciding on where she wanted the mirrors and where she wanted the toilet roll holders and various things and shelves. So still the attention to detail even on small projects. So small projects I believe are sort of bathroom makeovers, kitchen makeovers, loft extensions. We do lots of those. And then on the larger scale, this was a house that we're looking at the moment. That's the ground floor, first floor, and obviously roof, and that's a view from the rear, and that was incorporated two fairly reasonable sized extensions and remodelling within the existing house as well, and all of which had to be done while the client was in occupation. So very, very important that we got the sequence right, so that the building remained throughout a house and a home for the family, rather than a building site for the workers. So you've got to get the balance right, and that's what I'd call a whole house remodelling, whilst obviously in occupation. So there you go. So those are I think 4 schemes that we've either completed or are looking at and currently going through. And just to summarise, my name's Chris Brooks. The business is inout House and Garden Remodelling. Telephone number is 01371 820 600. Mobile number is 07876 331 Email address is chris.brooks@in-out.uk.com. And just to summarise, great attention to detail. We're focused totally on your understanding of what you want, and ensure that we give you what you want. Total control of the project from the start of the design right through to the finish, hopefully to exceed your expectations. And I've got lots of recommendations to prove that we do achieve that. Free consultation period, to give certainly to give you some scheme drawings, a budget, and a program. So that's extremely early cost and program advice. And so I hope you enjoyed that quick presentation. So that might be the end of the show, but hopefully it may be the start of the fulfillment of your dreams. So as I say, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I enjoyed presenting it, and I'd look forward to hearing from you. So for now, it's goodbye from me.